Last week, we heard from Maddy Osman about how to make money on marketplaces. And at the core of that advice was the ability to productize your services. But if you're not sure how to do that, where do you even start? Well, this week's guest, Brian Cassel, has you covered. His advice has inspired me to start offering my own new Productize service, and I know that he'll do the same for you. Now is a great time to start looking at how you can make your business and your income more predictable, and the advice that Brian gives in this episode will surely inspire you to really start doing that. And we'll get into all of that in a minute, but first, a word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Ahrefs. Ahrefs is an all-in-one SEO toolset that solves that problem. It gives you the tools you need to rank your website in Google and get tons of search traffic. As someone who struggles with what kind of content to create or what's ranking best in Google or really anything SEO related, Ahrefs has been instrumental in increasing traffic to my website. Over the holidays, I had my best quarter for affiliate income because Ahrefs showed me my most popular pages and topics, and I was able to optimize my content and my gift guides and update them accordingly. I would have never updated one of my gift guides because I didn't think it was that popular. Ahrefs actually showed me it is my most popular page. Ahrefs makes competitive analysis easy as well. Their tools show you how your competitors are getting traffic from Google and why. You can see the pages and content that send them the most search traffic, find out exactly the keywords they're ranking for, and which backlinks are helping them rank. From there, you can replicate or improve on their strategies. Now, as I said, I don't think I'm getting significant search traffic, so I use Ahrefs tools to help find topics worth creating pages or content for. I can easily see estimated search volumes and gauge traffic potential with their Keyword Explorer tool. It's been a fantastic addition to my toolkit. Just this morning, I learned that my everyday carry post has been popular. Lots of people are coming, so I think it's time to update that because it's 5 years old. If you want to gain a following or just improve traffic to your website, Ahrefs is the tool for you. You can get a 7-day trial for $7 over at ahrefs.com. That's ahrefs.com for a 7-day trial for $7. And if you're anything like me, you'll be hooked. Again, that's ahrefs.com for a 7-day trial for $7. And now, back to the show. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of How I Built It, the podcast that asks, how did you build that? Today, my guest is Brian Cassel. He is a business and product owner, and I know him best through AudienceOps, where he offers a productized service. Brian, before I bring you in here, I just want to say that I am offering my very first productized service thanks to advice I got from Brian at Cabo Press, a conference that happens around October, put on by Chris Lemma. So, Brian, thanks for coming on the show. How are you today?
Doing good, Joe. Yeah, good to talk to you while it's like freezing temperatures out here compared to where we last talked down in Cabo, where it was beautiful. But
yeah, in paradise, which I don't know if you're friends with Chris on social media, but he's there as we record this.
I saw, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think he ever really leaves there. So.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think like his office is just like a green screen, and he's always there.
Yeah.
I am near Philadelphia, and it is just like a frigid. It's like a painful cold now. Like I tolerate the cold pretty well, but this is it's like 10.
It's bad. I'm in Connecticut over here, so
okay,
same deal.
Yeah, nice. Let's see. What are you, like the northern part of Connecticut or like the southern part of Connecticut?
Southern. I'm near New Haven.
Okay.
Down.
Does that make you a Yankee
on the coast
fan?
there?
Nice.
I grew up in Long Island, New York, so I'm a Mets fan, actually.
Ah, Mets fan. Gotcha. Okay. All right. That's
I know. I should probably stop talking now.
That's fine. That's fine. I like the Mets. I'm a Yankee fan. I like the Mets fine. I divide New Jersey and Connecticut based on fandoms, right? Because like
it is
northern,
a weird mix here, like where I live here in Connecticut. You get like Boston and New York kind of mixed in the same area. It's weird.
Yep. When people tell me they're from Central Jersey, especially, I'm like, do you like the Phillies or the Yankees? And if they say Phillies, I'm like, you are Southern Jersey. There's no such thing as Central Jersey. But that's neither here nor there. We are going to talk about productized services today. I'm really excited about this. Last week, I spoke to Maddy Osman, who kind of talked about making money with marketplaces. And we touched on how you need to have pretty clear and predictable offerings on something like Fiverr in order for it to go really well. And that reminded me a lot of some advice that you have. So let's start off with a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So, I usually like to kind of work backwards on that question a little bit. I've done a bunch of things over the last, I've been like self-employed, doing my own thing out here for, like 11 or almost 12 years, I think. And so right now I do a couple things. One thing is I run AudienceOps, which is a productized service company, which we do blog content as a service. So a lot of the SaaS companies and WordPress companies and things, they use our team. I have a team of writers and copy editors, and we basically write and produce all the blog article content that comes out for them. We also do some podcasting services through AudienceOps and some customer case study stuff as well. But basically that's all productized, and I've been working on that for almost 5 years now to a point where I'm really not in the day-to-day on that business almost at all. I mean, I spend maybe an hour or so a week doing a little bit of sales, just answering a couple of questions here and there from my team, but I've got like managers in place who handle most of that. And so that kind of frees me up to spend, it's not like I'm vacationing all the time. I'm right. Still working, 40 hours a week. But these days I'm working mostly on software. So I've been designing and building my own software products. The main one being one called ProcessKit, which is a tool for some freelancers use it, but it's mainly for teams and agencies and companies who need to manage their processes and run their projects like powered by their repeatable processes. So it kind of automates like delegating tasks according to your processes on how you deliver things to clients and how you onboard and that sort of thing. So I've been kind of rolling that out for throughout this year and this will be coming out in 2020. So that's kind of taken up most of my time. And then, kind of working backwards from that, before AudienceOps, so this goes back to 2012 to 2015 or so, I worked on a business called Restaurant Engine. And that was a website builder, which kind of turned into a productized service aimed at restaurants. It was all built on WordPress, but I learned pretty early on in that business that, they don't really want like a website that they can come and set up their own website. Mm-hmm. They want it done for them, at an affordable price and high quality. And so I built this system kind of like a SaaS business, but then I ended up hiring people to like set up restaurant websites and get them onto the subscription. And I built that business again, like designed to like kind of remove myself from the process. And I sold that business in 2015. And that's when I sort of transitioned into AudienceOps. And before all that, I mean, I come from a background as a web designer and web developer and that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, but I mean, like it sounds like across your career, you've like run the gamut, right? You've done the services, you've offered a SaaS, or you have a SaaS now. You've sold a business, which is really cool. I like what you said about kind of restaurant owners don't want, they don't want this vast product where they can customize everything. I think this is why like Squarespace and Wix are so popular for people who just need a website. Like you can do anything with WordPress, but like most people don't want to do anything. They just want like their phone number on their website.
Yeah, I mean, like when I started Restaurant Engine, I started it around 2011, I think, and Squarespace was around, but it wasn't as popular as it is today. And WordPress was out there, obviously, but what I found then was that most small business owners, especially restaurant owners, like they don't even know what WordPress is, let alone like they don't even know what a domain name is. Like they're really like just kind of ancient with that. And so I kind of saw that gap as like, look, I know how to set up WordPress sites. I know how to handle hosting and install plugins and have some themes designed and all that. And I kind of put all those pieces together into, my thought was it would become a hosted WordPress platform, which it was. My thought was it would be a SaaS, which it sort of was. Mm-hmm. But really quickly in the first like 6 months of that business working with customers, it was like, okay, sure, I'll just set up your sites for you just to get you onto the platform. And then I started charging for that. And then I started hiring people to have a process to do that. And then it was like, oh, I guess this is like a productized service.
Nice. So yeah, we've both mentioned that a bunch of times, but we haven't really defined it yet. How would you define a productized service?
Yeah. So, it is in my mind kind of different from typical freelancing or consulting, or it's also different from typical agency work. So, whereas those tend to be pretty customized, work can really vary from one client to the next. All your clients are very different from one another. And you're kind of, every time you have a new client, you've got to like figure out what do you need? How much is it going to cost? Like how many hours is this going to be? What's the proposal going to look like? And you go back and forth, and it's just a painful process. With productized services, I think of it as just it's a set solution to a problem for a fixed price with a more or less fixed scope. But the key idea is that it's aimed at a very specific type of customer. So if you know who your best customer is, and maybe you're targeting a certain industry, maybe you're targeting a group of industries, but the same type of role in that business. If you have a problem that you know you're best positioned to solve, you can design the ideal solution to that and put a set price on it. And the goal, the key idea is that it's easier to sell. Number one, it's easier to scale up as a business, but it's also easier for the customer to buy. Because if you think about like the typical client who's going to go hire a freelancer or a company who's going to hire an agency, it's painful for them to try to figure out like, can they really do what I need them to do? Or I don't even know what I need. I know I have this problem, and then okay, they're quoting me all these billable hours. Like I don't like, how many hours is it really going to take? It's just a painful process. And then you start to like negotiate over, well, if we cut out this and that, then maybe we can change the price. With the productized service, the goal is to get it to where it's just a yes or no. So the customer comes to your website, or they meet you, or you reach them however you reach them. But then it's just a question of, am I the customer that this business is identifying? Yes or no? Do I have the problem that they are aiming to solve? Yes, I do have that problem. Yes, this is a no-brainer. Like this is exactly what I've been looking for. It should be easier to kind of buy and sell, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. It kind of makes me think of going to a mechanic, right? Where an oil change is a set price. You know exactly what you're getting from an oil change. But when you get your car inspected and then they're like, well, the brakes and rotors are going and you need this new hose and it's going to cost $1,000. And you're like, do I really? I don't know. I guess I do. I have to trust this guy enough to know if he's like yanking my chain or not. But and I think with a productized service, something, it's probably niching down, but like to the next level, right? Because you have selected some industry or some area where you want to specialize, but then you also know that area so well that you're removing the question of, does this person know what I need? So like with restaurants, you knew what restaurant owners wanted. Whereas maybe since I haven't done a ton of restaurant sites, I might go in and be like, oh yeah, we could probably like do your menu, but we don't want to do a PDF. And now it's like, oh, so I have to like manually input all of my all of my menu items or whatever. Like, what's that like or whatever.
Yeah, and it's also that also comes through in the marketing and the messaging too. So when I ran restaurant, it's still running today with a different owner, but when somebody goes to that website, if they are a restaurant owner, they're looking at this website that says restaurant websites. They're seeing pictures of restaurant websites. They're seeing testimonials from other restaurant owners. So the question in their mind of like, is this company capable of making me a restaurant website? Like, of course they are. They clearly, this is what they do every day. Compare that to a random client coming in contact with a web designer whose website says, I design nice websites. Like, okay, like, but do you design them for my university or for my doctor's office? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I could really trust that yet or not.
Yeah. It's the difference between going, yeah, I could do that, and like, yes, I do that. Right. It's like, yeah. That's fantastic. And like I said, at the top of the show, after having a conversation with you and a few other people at Cabo Press, I decided to start offering a productized service because, and we can get into this a little bit more. Like, when should somebody do this? I want to focus more on my memberships and my podcast. And as this episode comes out, I'm like, my wife is due in July with our second child. Oh, wow. And so like I don't want to trade time for dollars anymore, or I want to do that as little as possible. And I've been in the podcasting realm for a bunch of years now, and I know exactly why people would want to outsource this to somebody, right? Like, it takes too much time. I don't know all the steps. I know all the steps. It takes me less time. All you have to do is talk or whatever. And so my messaging is getting honed, and I picked up my first client shortly after I launched that because they tried to launch their own podcast and it didn't work. And they're like, yeah, we will gladly pay you to do this. So I had my reason for launching a productized service. Are productized services for everyone?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a good point there, because I think everyone has, there's a lot of very common reasons why somebody would want to go down this path. Sometimes it's a little bit different from person to person. So for me, my goal was always, so I was a freelance web designer. I did freelance, just typical web design work as a freelancer for maybe 4 or 5 years there at the beginning of my self-employed career. And the frustration that I had back then was, okay, all of my income is tied to my hours. This was before I had kids. So my wife and I would take a vacation once in a while if we could afford it. But even when we do, it's like I'm taking a pay cut because I'm taking a week off of work. Mm-hmm. And that just got kind of frustrating. And then the other thought that I had back then was, okay, well, how could I ever start hiring people? Like, when am I going to be ready to hire people? Sure, I could sign on a bunch of projects, and I did contract out to other freelancers once in a while, but I didn't feel comfortable with just hiring like employees and turning it into a business, because it just didn't seem predictable enough. It felt like I could get a bunch of projects and then I could lose a bunch of projects. I can't commit to hire. And I did try hiring an assistant, and that just caused too much work for me. And so fast forward, a couple of years of trial and error through this. And what I learned was, if you can make the business more predictable, so you're selling a more predictable service and you're doing the service in a more predictable way, then you can start to define, like, okay, every time we build a website or every time we set up a podcast, we're always going to use these tools. We're always going to follow this process. We're always going to follow this timeline. And that's the basis for a process that you can then remove yourself from. And then you can hire people to run that process in a predictable way. This is the kind of thing that definitely will not happen overnight. It does take a lot of work, a lot of trial and error, a lot of research into your market and talking to customers and all that. But that being said, I have found that going the route of a productized service is actually if your goal is to transition from being a freelancer, selling your time for money, hours for dollars, to a business that could run without you, that could scale and grow a team and free you up, I have found that productized services is that path of like least resistance, I like to call it. Because that is what got me out of it. Because I was also I was also getting into info products, ebooks, courses, and I wanted to build software products, and I still do. But those were much harder, and they are much harder to make that leap from replacing an income from being a freelancer to getting a full-time income from selling a course. I mean, it's just not going to happen overnight. Same with software, especially with software, because you got to spend a year just building it first. You know? And the nice thing about productized services is that you can start to charge your first customers very early on, very, very quickly. And then as you're working with them, you can start to hone the process and figure out, and then, you know, step by step, remove yourself from that. And so I think you can make that transition a lot easier that way.
Yeah. And that's a really great point, right? Because I'm sure a lot of freelancers, I mean, this was me for a long time. I would say, oh, you know, I have an idea for a WordPress plugin, or I have an idea for a course I want to launch. I'll just kind of do it on the side. And while I do client work, right? But then as soon as things get slow, you're like, I gotta back burner this so that I can actually make money.
Right.
And then you get stuck in that loop, right? I was stuck in that loop for like 10 years. While I was, even like when I had, let me tell you, even when I had a full-time job, I was like, great, I have income coming in. I can work on my product idea. But then if somebody came to me and they were like, hey, we'll give you, you know, a good amount of money to do this weekend project, I'm like, all right, I'm going to back burner the side project. This is money now.
It's cash. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And so I love that. With a productized service, you can start charging nearly immediately, right? You kind of develop it, and then with your first client, you can have money coming in because it is that kind of hybrid thing.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't need to spend a lot of effort on designing the service and getting it perfectly right. You really shouldn't do that. You know, you should wait until you have real clients in the pipeline and you're learning as you go. But like the difference, I'm sure you and your audience have heard of the idea of like pre-selling a product. So like with an ebook, you can announce it and say, hey, I'm going to write this book and it's going to come out 4 months from now. But you can pre-order it now. That's great. You know, you get some validation, you get some excitement about it, maybe a little bit of upfront revenue. But it's usually not very, very much. It's not going to be significant. Whereas with a productized service, you can literally just start charging whatever you're going to charge from day one, and you can start delivering the service because it's a service. You don't need to build any custom software. You don't need to go write a big book or a course. You know, you can just start getting to work on it. I mean, I hesitate to say like it's so easy that it can happen overnight, because it really it does take a lot of work, and it's usually built on whatever experience and inroads you have with a certain type of customer. But once you identify the customer and the problem you're solving and the way that you want to solve it, I mean, once you identify that, you can begin getting those first paying customers very quickly. I mean, with AudienceOps, from the time that I had the idea and passed it around to a couple of my warm contacts to the first paying customers, that was under 30 days, you know.
Wow. Yeah.
And I mean, it wasn't like it didn't replace my full-time income in 30 days, but I had like 3 paying clients within 30 days, and that grew from there, you know. So it's like you can start doing this pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, to mirror that, because you've been doing this for a long time, maybe some people are saying, well, yeah, he knows exactly what he's doing. Again, this is my first productized service. And from the time I built the page to, again, shortly after I floated it to a few people at WordCamp US is when I really started pursuing potential productized service clients. I signed my first one within 30 days, and I've got 2 very warm leads that I'm guessing it's probably just because it's the end of the year as we record this. And so like people are on vacation and budgets and things like that. But
yeah, I mean,
right.
It's awesome, you know, because it's not like they're just meeting you like you're a freelancer consultant. It's like So it's a podcasting service,
Yeah.
production service.
Yep.
So it's like you've identified. It's like that thing. You've identified like that thing. Like those are people who are like, in the new year, I really need to get a new podcast started, but I don't know how. And it's like boom, like your solution was like right there, like right place, right time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And to your point, I knew we met and I talked about this and they're like, we were thinking about starting a podcast, and I'm like, but where do you host your audio? But how do you schedule this? What equipment do you need? They're like, exactly. I'm like, I know all of that. So
Right.
You just show up with a microphone and I'll do the rest.
Yeah, I love it.
So yeah, it's fantastic. So hopefully by this point, we have convinced at least some of the listeners that a productized service is right for them. I will say this, if you are like I have my master's in software engineering. So I love programming and solving interesting problems. If you're somebody who always wants to be like solving that crazy, interesting problem, maybe a productized service is not right for you. Maybe you are more fit for like that agency life where like every new project is a different project. It really boils down to what you want out of your business. Do you want to be replaceable?
I would push back on that a little bit.
All right. Yes, please do.
I come from a designer, developer, programmer background, and I actually think of productized services, especially when you start to think about the processes, very much like programming. It's literally like follow the process step by step, and if this happens, then do that. Or if this happens, then do that. I mean, this is you're literally programming your business to run a certain way, and I mean that's what ProcessKit does. The tool that I built, it's literally about it's just putting people in place to run instead of software to do it. But you're doing that, and then the other thing I get this question a lot where it's like, well, I don't want to just do the same thing over and over again. I like the variety. I'm a creative person. I'm analytical. I do different things. I personally found that as I transitioned away from just doing like websites for clients to building different businesses, it's much more challenging. And in fact, every project that I'm working on these days is different from the next. It's just that the product that we're selling is the same. So
Gotcha.
like just the product and what the client buys, that's supposed to be as predictable as possible. But I'll spend 1 month working on the product. I'll spend another month working on our marketing plan. I'll spend another month working on our team. I'll spend another month working on our website. A different month, working on improving churn or retention. Like there's always something new and a new challenge to work on, and you're constantly learning. Like once you get into this game of like, if I can build a business that can run without me, then all of a sudden it like it's almost like a blessing and a curse. Like it's great because you're building something that can grow, but at the same time, it's like I never realized there were all these other really challenging things that I have no idea how to solve, but I'm going to try to figure it out.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you essentially move from solving problems, from working in the business to working on the business, right? Like
exactly
the
right.
problems you solve are different. Yeah, I really like that. That's great. I'm glad you pushed back on it. And so let's say we've now convinced even more people. How do you start a productized service? Like what is the first step I should take to figuring out my productized service?
Yeah. So I like to think about this concept of like, so if you've heard of the term product market fit, to know if you have the right product for the right market, I think there's another side to that, which is like product founder fit or business founder fit. And so you think about yourself, like you have some connection, whether it's to an industry or a type of client or a technology or a platform. Like in your case, you really know podcasting really well. So it's some area that you have a unique insider knowledge inside, like, a unique advantage that other people don't really have. Basically, you're well positioned to solve a certain problem. You kind of want to start there, and then at the same time thinking about what type of customer am I well positioned to solve that for. And you kind of have to merge a number of things. Like number one, like which customers have this really experienced this problem and they know that they experience, which ones are willing to pay for that problem to be solved, which customers can I easily reach? I mean, I'll be honest, like when I ran the restaurant engine business, like I didn't think so much about that early on. Like I don't have any personal connections to restaurant owners. I just very slowly over a number of years clawed my way up into Google rankings to try to reach them. But if you can go to a WordCamp and a lot of WordPress people and like that's like easy access to a group of people who experience the problem, like you want to start there is what I'm saying. You want to start where you already have a unique advantage, you already have some inroads and connections. That's a good place to begin, and then you just start to think about that problem and solution.
Love it. That's great. So again, I mean, what you're implying here is right. It's not going to happen overnight. You're making inroads into something, and if you've been freelancing for a while, maybe you realized, oh, I do these types of sites well, right? Or projects where I get to work directly with like the lead programmer go really well for me. So maybe I want to make sure I offer a productized service where I'm talking to their lead technical director or whatever.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So it really comes down to understanding what you do best, what you like to do, and like you said, where you can kind of make those inroads.
Yeah, and like everybody has some sort of inside connection somewhere. You might be surprised if you just haven't really thought about it before, but like even if you're coming from working at a full-time job, you worked in some department and you know the inner workings of how companies like that work. There's probably a whole bunch of things that they do that the outside world doesn't really know about. Like oh, they're using these like crazy spreadsheets to handle this thing. It's chaotic. Like if only like you can go in and solve that problem for other companies like them. Or like my wife is an occupational therapist. I just having known her, I know about all these like weird, challenging problems in that industry that like other people wouldn't know about. Like you never know, like where you can find those inroads. Or you're a freelancer, you've been working with a nonprofit client. Oh, nonprofits have these challenges. Like, you can find them anywhere.
Yeah, and that's another really good point, right? Because I'm sure there are some people listening going, well, I don't feel what I do is that special. But it's less that, and it's more what's something that you enjoy doing that you feel you do well for a particular group of people you do well, right? Like you mentioned that you do some podcasting through AudienceOps, and we talk to completely different groups of people though, right? So it's like, even though we might be offering something similar, which I'm not entirely sure we are, we're still offering it to like those groups of people that we've already made inroads with.
Yeah. Yeah. The other exercise that I like to think about at this stage when you're just kind of getting started with this is kind of like a thought exercise, right? So just imagine if if one of those like dream clients, like a perfect type of person that you would like to work with, or a company that you would like to work with, they just came to you one day and they said, hey, I think we have this problem, or we want to achieve some goal, but we don't really know what we need, and budget isn't really an issue for us. So you just tell us what you think we need to do. Obviously that very rarely happens, but if you can just imagine it, what would you say, right? Like if somebody came to you and said, like, I really want to launch a podcast in January. Like, what? I have no idea where to start. You can start to say, well, if I were doing it for me, I would want to use this microphone. I would want to use this planning for the calendar. I want to do this, and this. And you can put together your best ideal solution, like everything that you think should be in there, and just kind of design that ideal solution, and then of course you can figure out the pricing and how to make a profit on it and all that. But that's the first step, is to kind of package up your best ideal solution without having to go through the back and forth of like, oh, do you want this? Yes or no? Do you want that? Yes or no?
Mm-hmm.
It's
yeah. It all of those yes or no's start to make the product more predictable. And so you or less predictable, I'm sorry. And you actually said pretty early on, right? A productized service is about offering something and the goal is to get to where it's a yes or no. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. So that's really just about, formulating that value proposition, right? So today people come to AudienceOps' website and they're probably coming in already sold on the idea, like, we know we need to do content marketing. We know we need more blog content. They come to our website, they learn about what we do, they see our pricing right there on the homepage, and it's just yes or no. It's like, and it's not that people even buy it right there on the spot. They still get a consultation and they do a sales call, but they book the call already knowing basically what we do. They know how much we charge. They're basically sold on that idea. They just need to kind of talk to somebody and get some questions answered about it.
Yeah. It's it's almost like doing like a custom build of a house versus buying a pre-built house. Like you look at the house. Yes, I want this house, or no, I want the. If you're having custom construction done, like there's a million meetings and you don't know how much it's going to cost. But
I I just remember, like, as a freelancer, like I hated writing proposals. Like I really hated it. I spent because you would get a lead, like somebody would come to you, probably a referral from someone else. And then, I heard you design websites. Great. Let's have a meeting and talk about it. I got to go take a train into New York City and talk to somebody for a day. I don't even know if they're going to become a client, Right. And then I come home and I got my notes of everything we talked about. And then I spend another whole day just writing a big, long proposal. And then they see it and then they try to hack it apart and negotiate over it. And then we go back and forth. And then it's like a 50-50 chance of maybe they'll end up signing a contract, and it's like all that wasted effort and it's just painful. So if you can get to that point where it's like, this is what we do. If this seems like the solution to the problem that you have, then it's like yes or no, And if it's not, great. Like we don't really want you as a client if it's not what you need, basically.
Yeah, and that's another great point, right? What if somebody looks at your site and they say, "Oh, this is great. Like, I love all the content you're offering, but like, can you also do like a white paper for us or whatever? Like, how much extra would it cost to do that white paper? Like,
right.
What would you say? Yeah.
I think in some cases it's okay because, like, especially early on, you want to hear those questions, and if you hear the request come up repeatedly, it's like, okay, well, maybe that's something that we should build into the service for everyone. Other times it's like, okay, well, that's just a distraction, and it's just going to make it harder to build into a process. But early on, like, it's not the kind of thing that happens overnight. Like for me, I went through years of transition where I was doing Restaurant Engine and still doing totally custom projects to pay the bills. I mean, that happens, but ultimately, like today, every question, like we'll get requests sometimes for like, can you do this extra thing, or can you do it twice as fast than you normally do? And we learned the hard way early on. It's like, we can't really deviate from the process because it just makes everything fall apart, and it just makes everyone's job harder.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that's those are actually two great points, right? Starting off, like, those special requests are probably good, right? If in the next year or so, as I start to get more podcasting clients, if they're all asking, if they just want me to buy the microphone for them or something like that, like I can build that into the price. I will buy and ship you the microphone that you need, and here's a video on how to set it up or whatever, right? That's probably like an outlandish thing, but one of my add-on services right now is a website, and it's like a super canned website that's just going to list the episodes. I offered that because it's what I do best. I don't know if people are actually going to want it. Maybe in 6 months I decide I'm not going to offer that because it makes
that's the other
my
thing.
service less predictable.
I definitely found a few things very early on in AudienceOps that I thought were valuable to include, and it turns out, like, the clients never. So we did this thing where we prepared this whole big monthly report for every client. Here's how your content is performing. And in theory, it sounds like it adds a lot of value, but in reality, number one, the clients never looked at it. And number two, it took my team like weeks just to prepare these reports every single month. Like we would send like the November report like December 20th, something like that. And then as the client list grew, that just became a massive like rock that just like killing everything in the business. So it was like, we just ditched it. After a year, we just kind of stopped doing it. And so, you can find things like that where sometimes, it's whether they're not asking it or not asking for it or not using it, or it could be something that could add value.
Yeah, that's great. So we've been talking for quite a while now. When we're coming up to the end. I think we have a really good foundation for at least people to start thinking about, should I offer a productized service and how can I start that? What are a couple of tips that you would offer to somebody who is ready to make the jump? I know it's been mostly that the last 10 minutes or so, but if you just said like do 1, 2, 3, what would you say to the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does take it's uncomfortable to start to think about like, oh, I'm going to start doing some work that I'm not being paid for with my hourly rate. It's hard to get your mind around that, but at a certain point, if you are going to grow out of freelancing and into a business that can ultimately grow and not only grow in size, but actually grow in value. I mean, you're going to have to get to a point where you're not working on things and being paid by the hour. You're working on the business. And so if you can take any time out of your schedule, like during your work week, don't do this on a Saturday or whatever. Like
right.
Spend a Friday or like every Friday thinking about, how can I make my business better? Or what are the areas in my business that I'm not happy with right now? And try to diagnose the underlying issue. And maybe it's some of the things that we talked about here. But if you just take that time away to kind of analyze it and work on your business, so you can start to think about things like, what if I was not the person doing this work for the client and somebody else in my team was? What would need to be true for that to happen? Well, we would need to have a process. I need to have the right person in place. Things like that.
Gotcha. I love that. Especially kind of what if I wasn't the one doing it? I think that's a principle that I've learned, especially in podcasting. Like if it's not something I need to do, I don't want to be the one doing it. Right. So like editing, I outsource editing. Transcribing, I outsource transcribing. To people who have been doing it for my podcast and I trust them. If I did those things, this service would not work because I would spend too much of my week doing things that I didn't necessarily need to do and probably don't do as efficiently as my editor and my transcriber.
Right. So. Yeah. And, the other thing that I hear a lot about productized services is like, well, my clients really trust me, or they want me and they want my talent. They're not going to trust my team or whatever. I would push back on that. I think people would be surprised. Ultimately, like, yeah, your clients might like you personally, but ultimately they're paying you money because they have a business problem and they need it solved. And so they will trust in your ability to build the systems and build the process and your ability to vet and hire the right people to carry out your service. They'll trust in that just as much as they'll trust in your personal talent. And I mean, in most cases, the quality will be better. I mean, in AudienceOps, like, believe me, my clients don't want me writing their articles. Like that's just not gonna. It's not gonna be very good. I'm not a professional writer. We have professional copy editors and everything, and it's like, it's just a much better process for them. So
yeah, absolutely. It's almost like I like Ben and Jerry's ice cream, but I don't expect Ben and Jerry are going to make the ice cream. Right. And so actually, quick follow-up question before I ask you what a trade secret of yours is what if you do get pushback from a potential client and they're like, no, I want you working on it? Is that like an automatic no? You're like, all right, we are not a good fit?
Yeah, I mean, in my business today, like it's just not an option.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I mean, I'll be honest, like I just haven't even had that request, really.
Yeah.
Since day one of AudienceOps, which was back in 2015, from the very beginning of it, when I announced it to people, they knew that I was the one behind the business and designing it and building it. But it was abundantly clear that I was not the one writing their content. Yeah, I just don't know. Like I didn't have that request. But the way that I would handle it is just that because you want to sell your process as a benefit and your team as that. Like one of the big selling points for my company now with AudienceOps is that you're getting you're getting so much more value than hiring one person to do it. Because that's literally what they're coming to AudienceOps for. Because their alternative is to either hire a full-time person, which costs way more than AudienceOps, or they've tried hiring a freelancer and they didn't like the results, and it still took them too much time to manage their freelancer. With us, you get a dedicated writer plus a copy editor plus a content manager plus the assistant, and our process and everything is handled and we've really got it dialed in. So it's like you're getting this whole team of specialists, for a fraction of the price of like one person. So it's that's like a big selling point that I actually talk about on sales calls and stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. You want to sell your process as a benefit. I like that because it's true. I've had people who are like, I really want you to work on this project. And I'm like, I don't have the time, or it's going to be way longer now. Like I won't be able to get to it for 6 months.
Yeah. Or it'll cost like 10 times more. Like,
if I'm going to bump you to the front of the line. So, I think that's really great. I'm still the brain behind the process, but now you're getting people who are better suited than me to do each of these specialized things. I like that a lot.
Right. Yep.
Awesome. So as we wrap up here, I do need to ask you my favorite question, which is, do you have any trade secrets for us?
Trade secrets. It's different for everyone, but I'll say wake up early. I've become an early morning person, and I don't know what it is, but I get so much more done in the early morning hours than the rest of the day. I try to push my calls and things out to the afternoon, but the morning is like, for me, is like sacred. Like I literally get like 10 hours worth of work done in like a 2-hour span, between like 7 and 9 a.m. or so.
Yeah, I can really level with that. I was going to the gym first thing in the morning, and I realized that my productivity took a little bit of a hit because my morning is when I'm most productive. So I like reworked my schedule a little bit. Now, I mean, I will say that I haven't been as diligent about getting to the gym because the afternoon I'm just like zapped, or like it's rush hour by the time I'm ready to go. But I think what you're saying is right here. Like, wake up early, it's different for everybody, but you have found your most optimal time and you have arranged your schedule to help that.
Yeah. And also, thinking back to when I was doing that balancing act between trying to get Restaurant Engine off the ground and I'm still doing client work as a freelancer. I remember that I prioritized my product work first in the day. So wake up early and work on Restaurant Engine. And then I know I'm going to get to my client work. I have deadlines for that. Yeah. I'll just do that stuff in the afternoon. But my personal priority is getting this product business off the ground. Even though it's paying me way less than my client work is paying, just do it first. Give it all of your energy and you'll get to the other stuff later.
That's great. I really love that because like your clients are an external force on you, right? Like if somebody's hired you to do something, that's going to be the thing that pushes you to get it done. But like, if you're not motivated in the afternoon and you're like, oh, well, now is when I was going to work on my product or my course or whatever.
Yeah, you're
just
burned out by then. It's
yeah. Great. That's great advice. What a great trade secret. Awesome. Well, and I feel like I don't think I have like explicitly clarified it yet on the show in like 200 episodes. But when I say trade secret, I never mean like give me the secret sauce to your business. I mean like give me something, an interesting piece of advice. So I've had a couple people who are like, I don't want to give you a trade secret, and I'm like, I really just mean advice.
No, I'm pretty open with everything. That's another thing I've been really into, especially this year, is trying to share as much as I can. Like I do a podcast, and lately I've been doing. This isn't really related to Productize Services, but on my YouTube channel, I do a lot of like watch me work stuff, where
nice.
I'm doing a lot of my design and software development. Just kind of this is really what I'm working on. So look, watch me do a real project.
Oh, that's great. Like a almost like Twitch TV-esque, but for like
kind of, but a little bit edited after the fact. Yeah. But like I just released a series where I just created an explainer video for my product.
Yeah.
And while I was creating the explainer video, I was also recording like how I'm making it.
That's cool.
And I released that as a whole series. So.
Nice. I might steal that. Cool. So if you've seen me do that in early 2020, know that we recorded this in late 2019 and I stole it before this episode comes out.
Awesome.
And that actually is a perfect transition. You talked about some of your other stuff. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so my personal site is at briancassel.com. I do sell a course called Productize, and we have a private community. It's really great. It's been growing over the years. It's folks like us, like consultants and freelancers, making that transition to Productize Services. That's at productizecourse.com. And, I'm on Twitter at CastJam. That's about it.
Nice. All right. Awesome. I will link all of those and everything else we talked about in the show notes over at howibuilt.it. Brian, thank you so much for your time today. When we started, it was bright, and now it looks like the sun is setting for both of us. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
Thanks so much to Brian for joining us this week. I honestly loved so much of what he said in this episode. And like I said, he inspired me to start my own productized service over at shipyourpodcast.com. So I think the things I want to highlight here are kind of like your thought exercises. What would the ideal customer look like? What would you say if somebody came to you and asked you to solve a problem? Things like that. So I really like his tips, and definitely be sure to check out Brian and everything he has to offer. I also want to thank our sponsor for this episode, Ahrefs. I'm so excited to have them on board because, as I said during the sponsor read, they have legitimately helped me make money by understanding what content of mine is working the best. So be sure to check them out as well. To learn more about them and to get all of the show notes, you can head over to howibuilt.it/165. You can get all sorts of downloads there, as well as find links to our sponsors and to rate and review the show, which, if you liked this episode, be sure to do that because it helps people discover us. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, get out there and build something.